Hello everyone, I hope all of you are doing good and I am here with the fourth video of the video series on Gravitation Class 9 Science. I am Roshni from LearnoHub, the free learning platform where you can learn anything, anytime, from anywhere, absolutely for free at learnohub.com. So in this video, my agenda is to cover thrust and pressure application related problems. So let us get started.
Have you ever observed some small things around you? For example, have you ever observed that if you look at a car or if you look at a small vehicle like car where you have thinner tires, but when you compare it with some huge vehicles like a truck or a bus, you see the tires which they have are very thick. So, have you ever noticed that? I think most of you would have. Now, did you ever think what is the reason behind that? That the heavier the vehicle, the thicker the tire. Why is that? Okay. Again, you would have seen that not all animals can very easily walk or run over sand. But camels can do that very easily. Camels can walk comfortably over sand. They can even run over sand. So what is that? What is that special in the feet of the camel? And why is it difficult for us? Even if we walk on a plain road and if we compare to sand, you will see that over sand it becomes very difficult to walk. Again, you would have seen that things which are used to pierce, for example, you have a needle. It will have a very sharp edge. When you compare a spoon and a knife, which would you opt to cut vegetables? Definitely a knife. Why? Because knife has got a sharp edge. Similarly, when you look at a needle has a very sharp tip because of which you are able to make holes into things or you are able to stitch clothes with the help of needles, right? So these are some of the things which we have seen. We know that these things are true. Why these things are happening? I mean, why is it that things which are used for cutting objects have sharp edges? Why is it that heavier vehicles have thicker tires? How camels can walk easily over sand, but it is not possible for everybody else? So these are some of the things which remain unanswered without the knowledge of thrust and pressure. Now, why are we talking about thrust and pressure in this lesson is because thrust and pressure are in a way related to gravity. So they are also related to gravitational pull of the earth. So you will come to know that as we go ahead. As we go ahead a few slides, you will get to know why are we talking about thrust and pressure in this lesson. So let us first understand what is thrust. Thrust is nothing but a force acting on an object perpendicular to its surface. Okay? So it is a force which is acting on an object perpendicular to its surface. So since it is a force, therefore the SI unit will be the SI unit of force, that is Newton. Let us consider this example. Let us suppose you have a table and you have placed this lamp over the table. So this object which is placed on the table, do you think that there is a force which is acting on this object? Yes, there is a force because of the gravitational pull, right? And what is that force? The force which is exerted by the gravity is nothing but your force is the weight of the object, that is mg, right? That is what we talked about when we discussed about the gravitational pull of the earth, when we discussed about the weight of an object. So this force is acting on this object. Now this force is acting on the object. So this is one object and this is another object. So this force is also acting on the surface of this table. So that means this lamp which is there, the weight of the lamp is nothing but a force which is actually acting on the table. So that means this force is acting perpendicular to the surface of the table. So this force is known as thrust. So thrust is nothing but a different name for force acting perpendicular to a surface, right? So we say that this is the thrust. So similarly, this would be a better example to understand. Have you ever seen in your schools that you will have the notice boards, right? those velvety boards on which you stick papers. Now, do you think that papers get stick on the velvety boards by itself? No, right? You make use of these kind of pins, right? So these pins are used to pin the paper on those bulletin boards or notice boards, whatever you call it, right? So how do you actually pin them up? You have to apply some force perpendicular to the surface of the board, right? What do? You actually put some force over this pin, right? So that means you are applying a force in a direction perpendicular to the surface of the board. So this force which you are applying is nothing but thrust. So thrust is a force which is acting on an object perpendicular to its surface, right? So I hope you're clear with thrust. See, these are not very complicated things. These are all simple small things, but just that when you know these things, you're able to answer so many things which are happening around you, right? Now let us see what is pressure. Now that we have understood thrust, we are capable of understanding pressure, correct? So what is pressure? Pressure is defined as thrust per unit area. So that means thrust is just the force which is acting on any object. Now the effect of the force, the effect which that force causes, it changes with the area of the object. So that is what we will see now. That means even if you apply same amount of force, let us suppose you apply same amount of force on two objects which have different areas, the effect of the force will be different for the two objects. So that means even though the force is the same, but since the area changed, therefore the effect of that force also changed. So this effect of the force is nothing but pressure, and that is why we define pressure as force per unit area, or here thrust per unit area, right? Now SI unit of pressure is Pascal or Newton per meter square. So how do we define pressure? It is generally denoted by a capital P. We write it as thrust per unit area, or sometimes we also write it as force per unit area. So this is how we define pressure, right? I'm sure you are not very clear with it till now. Now let us look at this example. Once you understand the example, you will understand what am I trying to convey. Let us take the example of the school bags. Here you can see picture of two different bags. The first bag, what is the difference between the two bags? Can you notice? The first bag has got a thicker strap, whereas the second bag has got a very thin strap. Everything else remains the same for both the bags. Let us suppose both the bags have got some heavy books, your maths, physics, chemistry, biology, English. You have got so many books stuffed inside these bags. So maybe the bag weighs around some 3 to 4 kgs. So both the bags are having the same amount of stuffs. That means the mass of both the bags are the same. Weight of both the bags are the same. Okay. The only difference is that for one the strap is thicker, for the other the strap is thinner. Correct? So what happens in this case? When the strap is thicker, you are airy. But now if a small boy carries this bag, then he carries this bag, which will give him more comfort. I mean, you try it for yourself. If you take a bag which is loaded with lot of stuff, it is quite heavy, but it has a thicker strap, you feel more comfortable, right? But if it has got a very thin strap, as soon as you put it over your shoulders start aching because of that thin strap. But if you look at it, if you compare the two situations, in both the cases, you are carrying the same amount of load. The amount of things which are present in the bag is same in both the cases. It is just the area of the strap which is changing. So what is happening in this case? The area which is in contact with the body, that area is more. In this case, the area is less. Now, as per definition of pressure, but the force is same in both the cases, because force is nothing but the force is by virtue of the weight of the bag. So now mass of the bag is same in both the cases. So weight of the bag is same. Therefore, the force is same in both the cases. So as area increases, so this pressure will decrease. Correct? So in this case, the pressure is less. Whereas in this case, the pressure is more. So whenever the pressure is more, you will feel the pain. Pressure is the effect of force. That means because of the force, whatever the effect is, that is what we feel. So we actually feel the effect of the force. So we actually feel the pressure. So the pressure is more if you have a thinner strip. Right? So now you understand why you generally get your school bags with thicker strips. Correct? Now let us look at the next example, the same bulletin board example. Let us suppose in this bulletin board example, okay, now instead of using the pins, if you try to apply the force with your thumb, what will happen? Will the paper stick on the board? It will not stick. Why? Because when you are using your thumb, so one option is you use your thumb directly. You press the paper with the thumb. There is no pin at all. The second option is you take a pin and then you press the pin with your thumb. In both the cases, let us suppose you are applying the same amount of force. Force is same in both the cases, because in both the cases you are actually applying the force with your thumb. So you are applying the same amount of force in both. But in the first case, when you are actually putting your thumb in contact with the board, the area is more, because area of the thumb is more when compared to the area of the pin, because pin will have a very thin, it will have a very sharp tip. So if you look at the tip of the pin, that is extremely small. So the area is very, very small. Correct? Now when the area is so small, the pressure is very large. But in this case, the area is large, therefore the pressure is less. And what is pressure? It is the effect of the force. So whatever force I am applying, the effect of the force is actually the result of that force, right? So I am giving same force, but in case of thumb, the pressure which is felt by the board or the notice board is very less. But in case of the pin, the pressure felt by the notice board is very large, and because of that high pressure, the pin goes inside the board, but the thumb does not go inside the board. Right? So now you understand that as area, even though you are applying the same amount of force, but if area changes, the effect of the force also changes. And that is why there are few things which are designed in that way, so that they can apply more pressure on certain things. Many such examples. Now you understand why do we cut vegetables with sharp knives. So if I give you two options, in one hand I give you a sharp knife, on the other hand I give you a spoon. So a spoon will not be able to cut a vegetable that neatly as a sharp knife. Maybe the spoon will not at all able to cut it, because the spoon will have a larger area as compared to the sharp knife. Which area am I talking about in this case? Area would mean the thickness on this side, because when you are cutting the vegetable, the area that is getting exposed is this part. So this part's area, the thickness is its area. But if you take a blunt knife, that thickness is more. If you look at a sharp knife, maybe the thickness would be somewhat like this. But when you look at a blunt knife, the thickness would be more. So greater the thickness, greater the area, lesser the pressure. Lesser the pressure, the object will feel lesser pressure. So this is your target object, right? So this target object will feel less pressure, so it will not get cut. But if this target object feels more pressure, it will get cut easily. Correct? So in case of a blunt knife, so if we compare a blunt knife and a sharp knife, in blunt knife the area is more, in a sharp knife area is less. Area is more, force is the same in both the cases. So in this case pressure is less, in this case pressure is more. So if pressure is more, vegetable will get cut easily. Similarly, there is another instance which you would have observed. Have you ever observed that if you stand on loose sand, if you go near a sea beach ever, just try this out, or if you would have gone there before, you would have observed that when you stand over the loose sand, your feet tends to go inside. Have you observed that? When you stand on the sand, and that is why it makes very difficult to walk over the sand, because every time you put your foot on the sand, it tends to go inside, it tends to go deep, right? But if you lie down on the sand, does it happen that your entire body goes inside the sand? That doesn't happen. What is the reason? The reason is that when you are standing, What is the area that is in contact with the sand? Just the feet. So in this case, the area which is getting exposed is smaller. But in this case, when you are lying on the sand, the entire area of the body is in contact with the sand. So the area is more. Now the force in both the cases will be same, because here also the force will be due to the weight of the body. Right? Now mass of the body, because I am talking about the same person right now. This figure might confuse you because these are two different persons, but I am assuming that both the persons have same weight. So by virtue of weight, your force will remain same in both the cases. Here also your force will be mg. Here also your force will be mg. So the same force is acting on both the objects. Here the area is less, therefore the pressure is more. Here area is more, therefore pressure is less. So when the pressure on the sand is more, it tends to go inside. When the pressure on the sand is less, it doesn't make much changes, right? So what do we conclude with all such examples? Effects of forces of same magnitude on different areas are different, right? So now you understand why are we studying thrust and pressure? Because there are so many applications of thrust and pressure which we see around us, and also it is related to the weight of an object. It is related to the gravitational pull of an object. Again, the same problem. Why camels can run easily in deserts but not all animals? That's because, so the reason, why is it difficult for us to walk over sand? That's because every time we step on the sand, our feet goes inside the sand. That means our feet sinks into the sand, right? That's what happens with us. Now, when we look at the feet of a camel, camel's feet are very broad. So the feet of camels are broad, flat, and they have got leathery pads with toes on each foot. So they have got some leathery pads under their foot. So these three features of the feet of the camel helps them to walk over sand. Now since their feet are very broad, so what happens? Broad means the area is more. So when the area is more, the pressure is less. Now when the pressure on the sand is less, then there is less possibility of sinking, because when the pressure is more, only then the object sinks inside the sand, right? While we were standing, that time also the pressure was more. That is why our feet was going inside. But when we were lying down, the pressure was less. So our entire body was not going that down, right? So this is one advantage. Now it is flat. Now since it is flat and it doesn't have any curves, in case you have curves, again it tends to sink inside. So they are flat. They have got leathery pads. So what do these pads do? Whenever the foot of the camel is placed on sand, these leathery pads spreads and it prevents the foot to sink into the sand. So it is like, let us suppose if you have these leathery pads like that, as soon as they step on the sand, they spreads somewhat like this. So as soon as they spread, what happens? The area increases, so the pressure decreases. So decrease in pressure, all these features, they all support and they all decrease the pressure, and as a result, the foot of the camel, they never sinks, and the camel can comfortably walk as well as run over on the deserts. Right? So these leathery pads spread, as a result, area increases and the pressure decreases. Right? So everything, whatever examples we took so far, everything is a matter of different areas. So if you have different areas, the effect of the force will be different. Correct? Okay. Now let us also take the examples of the truck and the car. Why trucks have thicker tires than cars? So in this case, when I talk of a truck, what happens? The mass is more. As a result, the weight of the truck is more. Whereas in case of a car, the weight is comparatively less. The weight of a truck or a bus or a goods carrying vehicle, their weight is more. But the weight of a car is comparatively lesser. Now if the weight is more, the force is also more, but in this case the weight is less, therefore the force is also less, because what is weight and force are closely related. Weight is equal to mass into acceleration due to gravity, and mass into acceleration is nothing but force. Now in order to keep the pressure not very high, because in this case also if the pressure becomes very high, then the tires of the vehicle will tend to go inside the ground, right? So to keep the pressure not very high, the thickness of the tire in this case is also increased, because if you keep the tire of same thickness for car and truck both, in this case what will happen, in this case the pressure will increase a lot because the force is more here. So in order to keep the pressure comparatively same, if you increase the area, pressure decreases. If you increase the force, pressure increases. So whatever increase in pressure is caused due to high force is compensated to some extent by the increased area. So therefore pressure doesn't increase much, right? Whereas in this case the force is comparatively lesser, therefore the effect of the force is also not very high, so the pressure is okay in this case. So in this case you really don't need to thicken the tires. We thicken the tires to increase the area, so that the increase in area can decrease the pressure, which because the pressure is already too much increased because of the increased force.
I hope you found the video useful. Please let us know your feedback in the comment section, because your feedback is important to us. I will meet you guys very soon with a new video with a new topic. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.